You've done it. Maybe not today. But at some point, you've written the message you never sent. The one where you said everything. Where you held nothing back. Where every frustration, every injustice, every word you'd been swallowing for weeks finally found its way out. You wrote it. And then you stopped. Maybe you deleted it. Maybe you left it as a draft. Maybe you printed it and tore it up. Something told you, don't send this. That instinct, that pause before the send button, might be one of the most underrated forms of wisdom in human history. And no one understood it better than the man who once led a country through its bloodiest war. It's 1863. The United States is tearing itself apart. Abraham Lincoln is managing generals, politicians, grieving mothers, and a nation that seems determined to destroy itself from the inside. He is exhausted. He is under attack from every direction. And one of his own generals, a man named George Meade, has just made a decision that, in Lincoln's eyes, may have cost the Union its best chance to end the war. The Battle of Gettysburg had just ended. The Confederate Army, under General Robert E. Lee, had suffered devastating losses. Lee and his men were retreating south, and Meade, commanding the Union forces, had the rebels cornered at the Potomac River, which had flooded. They couldn't cross. They were trapped. Lincoln saw it, his generals saw it, everyone saw it. This was the moment. Pursue Lee. Destroy the Confederate Army. End the war. Meade didn't move fast enough. He was cautious. He waited. He deliberated, and Lee escaped across the river. The war would drag on for nearly 2 more years. Hundreds of thousands more would die. Lincoln was beside himself. He sat down, and he wrote Meade a letter. And he wrote exactly what he felt. He told Meade that he had a golden opportunity. He told him the war could have been over. He told him that by failing to act, he had allowed Lee to escape, and that now the war would drag on, and that the cost of that delay would be measured in human lives. It was honest. It was devastating. It was the full, unfiltered weight of Lincoln's anguish and frustration pressed into ink. And then Abraham Lincoln folded the letter, placed it in an envelope, and wrote on the outside, "To General Meade, never sent, never signed." He put it in his desk. It was found after his death, in his papers, exactly as he had left it. Why did he do this? Lincoln was not a soft man. He was not conflict-averse. He had fired generals before. He had made enemies. He had said hard truths to powerful people. He was not someone who shied away from difficult conversations. But Lincoln understood something that most people learn only after years of painful experience. There is a difference between expressing anger and communicating effectively. There is a difference between making yourself feel better and actually solving the problem. Psychologists today call it emotional flooding. When you are angry, genuinely, righteously, justifiably angry, your brain shifts. Your prefrontal cortex, the part responsible for long-term thinking, empathy, and consequence assessment, goes quieter. The emotional centers take over. You feel the urgency. You feel the rightness of your cause. You feel that the other person must hear this, must understand, must be made to feel what you feel. And in that state, you are almost always wrong about what will happen next. Because here is what the research consistently shows. People who receive angry, critical messages do not tend to become reflective. They become defensive. The message doesn't land the way you intended. It triggers their own emotional flooding. Now you have 2 flooded people, and neither of them is thinking clearly. Lincoln knew this, not from psychology textbooks, but from a lifetime of watching people. He knew that if he sent that letter to Meade, Meade would not sit quietly and think, "He's right, I failed." Meade would feel humiliated. He would feel attacked. He might resign. He might become an enemy. And Lincoln needed Meade. He was fighting a war. He didn't have the luxury of winning arguments at the cost of losing allies. So he wrote the letter. He let himself feel it all. He gave his anger a place to exist. He was honest. Brutally, completely honest. On paper. And then he chose not to set it in motion. This is not suppression. This is not swallowing your feelings and pretending they don't exist. That is a different thing entirely, and it carries its own costs. What Lincoln did was something more sophisticated. He separated the act of feeling from the act of communicating. He let himself be human in private so that he could be strategic in public. Think about how rare that is. Most people treat expression and communication as the same thing. If I feel it, I should say it. If I'm right, the other person should know. If they hurt me, they should hear about it. But expression and communication are not the same thing. Expression is for you. Communication is for the relationship or the outcome. And they require completely different approaches. A letter you write in anger, even a justified, accurate, completely fair letter, is almost always an expression. It is not communication. Because communication requires that you think about what the other person can actually receive at this moment and what will actually move things forward. Lincoln was doing something else too. He was testing his own convictions. There is a practice, not widely known, but used by some of the most effective thinkers in history, of writing out your strongest arguments to yourself, as if you were trying to convince yourself. If the argument still holds the next morning, it's probably true. If it dissolves in the light of a new day, it was emotion, not principle, doing the thinking. Lincoln's letter stayed in the drawer, which may mean that, on reflection, he understood something even deeper. Meade had done his best. The situation had been genuinely difficult. The facts on the ground were complicated, and sending that letter would have punished a man for making a hard call under pressure, punished him in a way that served no purpose except Lincoln's momentary relief. Relief that would have cost him dearly. This is the hidden lesson in that folded envelope. Not just, don't send angry emails. Not just, sleep on it before you respond. Those are true and useful, but they are the surface. The deeper lesson is this. The most powerful response to frustration is not always silence. It is not always restraint. Sometimes the most powerful response is to feel the thing fully, to write it all out, to honor your own anger by giving it a real home on paper, and then to ask yourself a single question. What do I actually want to happen? Not what do I want the other person to feel right now. Not how do I express what I deserve to express. But what outcome in the real world do I want to create? Because when you ask that question, the answer often changes what you do next. Lincoln wanted to win the war. He wanted to preserve the Union. He wanted fewer people to die. None of those things were served by humiliating George Meade in a letter. And so, the letter stayed in the drawer. Think about the last time you were on the edge of sending something. The text at midnight. The email you wrote and rewrote. The conversation you rehearsed in your head on the drive home. The reply you almost sent before closing the app. What were you actually trying to create? Sometimes the honest answer is, I wanted them to feel what I feel. I wanted to be heard. I wanted justice, and those are real needs. They deserve to exist. You are allowed to feel them, but they are often better served somewhere other than the message you send. There is a reason Lincoln is remembered not just as a wartime president, but as a leader of rare emotional intelligence. It wasn't that he never felt anger. It was that he refused to let anger make decisions that were supposed to be made by wisdom. The letter exists today in the Library of Congress. You can read it. You can feel the weight of what Lincoln felt. But Meade never did. And that restraint, that small, private act of writing and not sending, may have been one of the quietest acts of leadership in American history. Tonight, there might be something you need to say to someone. Something real and justified and long overdue. Write it. All of it. Don't hold back. Give your feelings the space they deserve. And then ask yourself, is this for me? Or is this for what I actually want to create? The answer will tell you everything.